Ilia Topuria has emerged as a superstar over the last couple weeks after knocking out Alexander Volkanovski at UFC 298 to win the featherweight title. And I think the UFC has got to take advantage of this because this does not happen often where they have a fighter that is getting this much worldwide attention. That's what I'm going to talk about here in today's video, some of the challenges going forward and some of the things that have happened to Ilia Topuria over the last 2 weeks. And let's start first with the fact that Ilia Topuria is still in the news. Here's an article a couple days ago from MMA Junkie talking about Ilia Topuria meeting the Prime Minister of Spain, who's promising to get him citizenship in Spain, Spanish citizenship, I should say. That's a big deal. I know there's other fighters that have met prime ministers and presidents and things along those lines, but that's still a big deal that he's getting worldwide recognition from the prime minister there. And then how about this with Real Madrid? And again, for people out there, I mean, most people know who Real Madrid is, the football club, the soccer team. But I mean, look at their worth, $6 billion. They are easily the most, recognizable, profitable, sports team in the entire world. And here's Ilia Topuria. I think you guys have seen the video already. I'll show it to you again. Here he is walking out. I know this is a couple days old here, but this is a very, very, very big deal. And I don't think a lot of, casual MMA fans really understand the magnitude of this. This would be like the equivalent of like a UFC fighter visiting like the New England Patriots at their practice facility when the Patriots were in their heyday or something like that. Like any sort of like major sports franchise. Like this is a very big deal. And here's the thing, the UFC didn't set up any of this. This is people coming to Ilia Topuria and having him come out. And one of the benefits that Topuria has, aside from the fact that he's winning his fights and he's been, getting a little trash talk in there as well, is the fact that he's from Spain and he's also Georgian as well. So he's got kind of, this really big backing from two really big international fan bases. So that's something that, again, the UFC has the luxury of having a fighter that's representing. One of the reasons that Conor McGregor is so popular is because Conor McGregor's from Ireland, right? Like if Conor McGregor was American, he'd be very popular, but I think he's more popular with the fact that he has that international appeal. That's what Topuria has as well, with everything that he's done over the last little bit here. So there's a couple things though to note about what the UFC should do sort of going forward here. And one of them is who is Ilia Topuria going to be fighting next? Because right now you have a few options. The best option for Ilia Topuria right now would be him fighting Max Holloway. And we know that's not going to happen right now because Max Holloway, as I Google it here, he's got a BMF title fight here against Justin Gaethje in a fight that I think didn't need to be made. It didn't need to happen. Listen, I'm very happy about UFC 300. I'm not going to complain about the card. This is a fantastic fight, but you don't book this fight. The UFC, the second Ilia Topuria knocked out Alexander Volkanovski, is signing pen to paper on a Max Holloway fight. And now you may never get that fight, right? Because who knows what's going to happen in this matchup? What if Max gets knocked out? What if, there's so many things that could happen here. And let's say he does fight Max down the line. The time to do it is right now. How long? We've had Alex Volkanovski as the featherweight champion for such a long time. We get some new blood here. Max Holloway has been in limbo because of losing to Volkanovski. And now he's not even available because they had to make this, let's call it what it is, placeholder title fight, I should say, for UFC 300. It's not needed. That I could do a video on that in itself, but that's the one thing that kind of sucks about the situation. So you've got Movsar Evloev, who is undefeated. And if you look at the rankings, at featherweight, it should be, he should be next man up, right? Because he's never lost. He's undefeated, right? So Evloev coming in at number 5 right now. You've got Rodriguez, who just lost. There's Brian Ortega as well. We'll talk about him in a sec. But Evloev should get it. But, if we're going off the business side of MMA here, Evloev's not going to get the shot. Unfortunately, not great on the mic, not finishing his opponents. These are things that the UFC looks at. We just saw Colby Covington get a title shot back in December. Part of that was the fact that Covington's a commodity for the UFC. Unfortunately, Evloev isn't that, and he's probably going to get passed over here. So from a business perspective, with who's available right now, Brian Ortega probably is the best option, even though I think we can all agree, or maybe, probably get some pushback on this. I don't think he deserves it. If we're going off merit, Ortega's coming off 2 losses. He wins one fight in a fight that he was losing, and now he gets the title shot. I don't know. That's kind of a tough sell, not to mention the fact that the fight he had before that against Yair Rodriguez was back in 2022. So he's been off for a while. In most cases, he should have been taken out of the rankings, and now you've got him here. But if we're going from a business perspective, which is what this video is about, then Ortega's a slam dunk pick here. We got to see what's going on with his ankle and everything else, but you want to keep Topuria active. Kind of what I'm getting at here in this video is that he's getting all this international attention here. The UFC did not expect this. This was not something I think they anticipated when Topuria won the title. So you have a fighter now that is being on the international stage. Remember I did a video on this about Sean Strickland about how, his, sort of dust up with the reporter was getting sort of mainstream appeal. This is mainstream appeal that the UFC is always struggling to get. I mean, you look at all, a lot of their champions, you could go in a grocery store right now and pull 30 people. You probably won't get a lot of people knowing who, some of their champions are right now, who, someone like Alexander Pantoja is. No one's going to know who that is. If I pulled 30 people right now, they're not going to know. But this is something a bit different where I'm sure people who aren't even MMA fans have seen it on social media. Topuria, the clip of him with Real Madrid, the clip of him with the Spain Prime Minister. I mean, these are all things that, again, the UFC should be capitalizing on right now. So I mentioned the first hurdle is the fact that you're not getting a Max Holloway fight. The second hurdle here is, and I think, a lot of people want to see the UFC go to Spain. I do too. I think that's the place to do it. Again, Real Madrid, you've got the Prime Minister. Like, who wouldn't want to have this in Spain? Here's the problem. Because of the UFC setup with ESPN, they have to book stuff in advance. I don't think Spain's happening this year. I might be wrong, but I just don't get the indication that the UFC is going to have enough time to put on an event in Spain. Because if you look at it right now, they're already booking events well in advance, right? I mean, let's start with 300. That's in Vegas. You've got 301 in Brazil. You've got the 302 pay-per-view, which we don't know where that's going to be right now, but again, I think that's too short notice in June of them doing an event in Spain. You got Saudi Arabia in June as well. You've got International Fight Week, which is UFC 303, which is going to take place there. I don't think they're going to put Topuria on that card. They might, but again, I think with all the international appeal that Ilia Topuria is getting, you want to put him on an international card. That's something the UFC hasn't really taken advantage of. Like, even a quick example here is having Yuri Prohaska and Alexander Rakic on UFC 300. That would be a much bigger fight if they did that fight in Europe, right? Just because of the two, you've got obviously Rakic with his fan base, and you've got Yuri Prohaska, who's Czech. That would be something interesting there. Then they're going to the Sphere in September. So kind of what I'm getting at here is you're running out of spots here. Topuria's next fight has got to be on a pay-per-view. So if you're looking to September, October is typically Abu Dhabi. Where are they going to do the Spain card? Is it going to be in November? Probably not. They're probably going to do that in New York. December's usually Vegas. So this is what I'm saying. Like, because the UFC has this deal with ESPN and they kind of have their spots that they go to every year, I don't think you're going to see this in Spain. And I think that's a big mistake for the UFC here because, again, they've been given a gift here in Ilia Topuria being this massive superstar that I don't think they anticipated here. So I think the UFC's got to be very careful because what has been one of the biggest problems for the UFC over the last couple of years, it's building superstars. And part of the reason is they don't take advantage of certain opportunities. And this is just the business model that they have set up where, again, ESPN's like, hey, we need dates. We need to figure out our camera crew and all this different stuff. That's why they have to do stuff in advance. And that's part of the reason why there's so many events because this is in the contract. Like, the UFC is more about putting on the event. Like, we had this whole situation last year with Australia, right? Where it had to be the winner of Duplessis and Whitaker fighting Israel Adesanya next because they had already booked Australia and they already committed to Adesanya headlining the card. But we ended up getting the Sean Strickland fight and Strickland came in and he saved the day. But what if Strickland didn't take that fight? They would have had to come up with something else. We had this with Abu Dhabi last year too, where Islam couldn't fight Charles. And so they threw Volkanovski in there and they, in my opinion, ruined one of the biggest rematches in UFC history by making Volk fight on 10 days notice when they didn't need to. This again is one of the hindrances. I don't know if that's even a word. It's something that's hindering the UFC is the fact that they have this ESPN deal. So if I'm the UFC right now, this is what I do with the options I have. I think you try and do some sort of international event if it's not Spain. And here's the thing, the UFC's never been to Spain. So chances of them going this year, probably not very likely. Look how long it took to go to other markets that they've been trying to go to for years. I don't think Spain's happening this year. My recommendation for the UFC would be this. Find an international destination to go to. I don't know where it is in Europe, but you got to do some pay-per-view there somewhere. I know they typically make more money in the US, but I think with, again, the appeal for Topuria is more so overseas than it is in North America. So they got to figure out somewhere, some way to make a pay-per-view. Maybe you skip New York this year. I don't know, but you got to do a pay-per-view somewhere internationally. I think that's like a big plus here for the UFC that you got to do. And then I think you got to do Brian Ortega as the opponent. And again, I don't agree from this from a merit standpoint, but Ortega is the biggest name that's available right now. They would have loved to have Yair Rodriguez. Unfortunately, Ortega spoiled the party there. I'm sure they would have loved to have Max Holloway, but he's booked. This is what I mean. The UFC has to take advantage of this if they want to build another superstar here. And I want to be clear about something too. And I didn't mention this off the top. I was supposed to, but Ilia Topuria is not Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is an anomaly. I mean, it's just very hard to do what McGregor's done, which is, for him to represent, an area of the world that, doesn't have a lot of, big sports heroes. That's what McGregor does with Ireland. You got to be really good on the mic. Topuria is good on the mic, but he's not Conor good on the mic, right? I think we can agree on that. And Topuria is very exciting but no, I don't think as exciting as Conor McGregor was. I mean, Conor McGregor had, a lot more highlight reels in terms of his UFC career than Ilia Topuria has had. In fact, Topuria's rise has been a lot shorter than Conor's, right? If you look at how many fights he's had and who he's beaten stuff, it's been a little bit shorter. So they're a little bit different. Could Topuria get there? Possibly, but it's very hard to do what Conor's done. So I'm not saying that Topuria is Conor McGregor, and I don't know if he ever will be, but you have a lot of elements that Conor has as well. I mean, even the way they dress is kind of similar too. You got to try and make another superstar here. And again, I think the UFC's best option here is doing an international card here with Topuria and Ortega somewhere. And you got to do it soon. You got to capitalize on this, because again, these opportunities, they're only as good as people remember them. And again, the UFC's got to strike while the iron's hot here. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'm looking at this strictly from an international perspective. I think the UFC has to take advantage of what Ilia Topuria brings to the table. You got to do his first title defense right. Let's hope Max Holloway doesn't take too much damage, and then Holloway can fight the winner of Ortega and Ilia Topuria in that matchup. I just think there's a lot of really good things that the UFC wasn't expecting with Ilia Topuria, and they have to take advantage of it. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. And if there's any other video topics you want me to tackle, let me know in the comments. I really do want to hear from you guys and give you guys content that you want to see every week. I'm trying to put more of these out when I have time. So just let me know in the comments, and I'll talk to you guys soon. I'm James Lynch. Appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you next time.